Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so glad to be here together. As you see, all my friends are here. We got the incomparable Christiana here, the amazing Pastor Sunia Gibbs over there, and my man, Mr. Paul Sparks. We are here and we're about to have a conversation about one of the most intriguing things I think the Parish Collective has done over time. And that's really talking through this idea of what does it look like for us to see or to be able to visualize what it means to be a parish church. What are the signs of a parish expression in a neighborhood? And now we're getting into this fifth side is now linking across discussion here about it. So what I want to do is I want to read the full where we're starting, and then we're going to ask them to just give us a little bit of. This is the most interconnected moment the world has ever experienced. While this reveals divine diversity, the dominant stories of our time often unravel local cultures and diminish our differences, producing false homogeny and erasure. We must produce an alternative by reimagining our connections. As we intentionally build relationships across contexts, we are seeking a spacious gospel that illuminates and confronts our biases, convinces us of generous inclusion, and honors the unique way the good news manifests itself in places different from our own. The practice of linking across parishes exposes our inequities, expands our creativity, and weaves together a church across time and place that can manifest the multifaceted beauty of God. Amen. Wow.
That's some good words right there.
Woo. All right. Lots to process there and lots to talk about, but I just want to start with this first sentence. It says, "This is the most interconnected moment the world has ever experienced." What a great way to start off this blurb, this thought. Can you talk to us a little bit around this idea of interconnectedness, the time we live in, and how that's a springboard for?
But yeah, I think we are so aware of what is happening around the world, around place, in a way that we haven't been before. So Gen Xer, I remember the days before one could Google something, right? Before someone could have quick access where Twitter was letting me know in a moment what was happening literally across. I think that's just winning too much at times, hyper aware of what's happening. And there is an interconnectedness in that can share and reveal to us the humanity we share.
And so the big thing that comes up for me is that in the midst of that, while it brings up such profundity and such possibility of diversity and mixing and understanding the effects of our actions across places, it's all so beautiful. But the thing that gets me, like going to, say Australia on the other side of the planet from me, and visiting churches, visiting their church meetings, and having the exact same buildings, the exact same sound system, the exact same chairs, the exact same song, the exact same announcement, the exact same preaching. And you're like, okay, it's possible that this global connection could produce a multiplicity of cultures, and our places could give birth to such beauty and difference and diversity, or it's possible that we could all essentially become like the white churches that were.
Yeah, no, like you guys are doing it now, like this idea. And I heard you say how it leads into your next sentence, because I definitely see it, right? You've got these poles that you kind of speak out in this next sentence, this divine diversity versus like false homogeny. Like I think Paul is just kind of talking about, right? Like it could either be like we're seeing the full diversity of God and all that divine creates, and it's all interconnected, and we get to know a little bit about that diversity, or we can transplant homogeny all around the world and then just say you're not successful, or that possible, right? But what is it that we as the parish movement need to do different in our linking that actually leads to the diversity we're talking about, this divine diversity versus this false homogeny that could come up?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to this and as we go along, is that I think the truth is divine diversity. That's the reality. That's the truth. And what we're talking about is it's a false homogeny. It looks the same, but the truth is that there's a diversity of gifts. There's a diversity of culture, it's just not true. And so the invitation is for us to live into the reality, the truth of the diversity that God has created, that we are as individuals and then as communities, as neighborhoods, need to live into. And that takes great intention, because the dominant narrative, the dominant culture, I think, as when I talked with Paul about this, I think that's the big piece of this, is to be intentional about linking across difference. It's easy to find likeness, affinity. It is much, much harder, to link to love across difference. But that's actually, I think, the invitation as
Preach.
If the church in the neighborhood, so if the parish movement is about church and neighborhood, parish movement, what is possible and hopeful if we intentionally acknowledge this truth and we intentionally link across places?
Well, I wanted to say that what is probably one of the most important movement of the neighborhood church, of the parish movement at large, is that right now across our country, around the world, there are two options in many places: essentially church as it has always been, or the deconstruction and unraveling of the whole thing. And in order for there to be a third way, in order for the church in the neighborhood to become a viable option, we have to link arms across places and demonstrate that another way is possible, and that people are around the world partnering to do that very thing. And so I just think it's essential for our own growth as followers of Jesus and as the church in our neighborhoods, but it's also essential for laying out a new path and a new way for the movement at large to become visible.
When you say that, is that
okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like
you can
that.
it feels compelling.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's why we have to, when you talk about making, visibilize the things that are hidden in the very everyday.
Even those who are deconstructing it are church is actually an entrance into the neighborhood, and I just haven't found a way to help people recognize that. People are looking for another. That's all that's happening.
You're right.
Deconstruction is actually a movement to place, and what's another way? I found church when I was on the streets protesting George Floyd. I'm like, okay, you got with people. You're right.
Yeah, I'll bring up just right from the get-go that I mostly via Zoom, but I meet with her regularly, as much as possible in person, through this crazy season that we're in. And who they are and their dynamics of their upbringing. And I love to explore all the ways that Sunia is listening to her body, to her place, to her situation, to the church, and how it's meant forth from her situation. And the Jesus story is right there to intersect with, to grow life, the most hope, the most beauty, And so I just want to shout out to you, Sunia. I'm so grateful for, the way you live that out, and your art and your songs and your spirit of protest, all of it has taught me so much,
Yeah. Well, when we do that, whatever, it's not like Paul and I have the same, we don't, as much as we have in common, we don't have shared language or shared experiences. So there are plenty of times in our conversations where I'm like, I have no idea what he's talking about. That doesn't make any sense to me. Is this what you mean? And, it's all that to say that when you are linking across difference, there are challenges. And the word that comes to me about this has to do with commitment. I think that's a piece that is important to that, because otherwise it can really kind of turn into a voyeurism or a selfish kind of And I think if we really want to be the church, it requires love, which has to do with it. And I'm just grateful, like Paul has you can hear it in his voice, this like inherent desire and quest, right? In that engagement, in that dialogue. And that might not everyone may sense that that's present, but like the truth, like what Paul's saying, there's some really, like, there are gems, there are treasures, there's gold when you really dig in and determine to
Yeah, I think just as a bit of a cap on it, right? Like there's this desire to link across difference that takes intentionality that Paul's talking about, that he recognizes a benefit to him, his community, brings hope, brings new ideas, brings all those things. And then there's this understanding on Sonia's part that's like, hey, this is not always going to be easy, but it's something I have to be committed to, right? It's something I have to make sure that I'm working on language. I'm working on that relationship that we're creating between the two of us supersedes any of the struggles that it takes in order for us to. I think there's a third thing that's at play that like is at the convergence of you guys saying, and that's this recognition of as a woman, right? Like all the lived experiences that she has. And I think that we as the Parish Movement have to be aware as we converge and link across that those structures are at play, that we come in with inherent biases that we have to lay down, that we have to be okay with other people maybe calling out if we aren't able to lay them down. And that's where the change, the rub really starts to happen. You're the expert, right? Like you're the person I need to grow and learn from. And so I just wanted to bring to the top, like, this kind of like thing that's underneath y'all relationship that's so beautiful that people are like, I want that. And I'm like, well, there was real work that went into that too. That I think this sign is really talking about, that's underneath it, that we all have to do. And I'm thankful that we have an actual tangible expression between you two of how that can play out when they just look at you and hear your stories and hear your respect for one another. So that's what I think I hear with Linking Across Difference. And I'm really grateful that it was you two, Paul and Sunia, who are the ones that get to not only talk about this. Thank you, Christiana, for your voice today and for the time. And I'm just appreciative of these signs. This is the 5th one. Make sure you watch all of the videos, take in the information, take in the thoughts, and really begin to have discussions in your own parish about how you can lean into the different signs and what you're seeing bubbling up in your place, and then how you can link across difference to see how it can impact you.